While I was stationed in Okinawa, my dad sold my house to pay off my deadbeat brother. When I came home, they stood on the porch laughing. You're homeless now. I just smiled. What's so funny? They snapped. I said, the house you sold was actually. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The flight from Okinawa to San Diego took 14 hours, but the real turbulence didn't start until the taxi stopped in front of 422 Mariposa Lane. My house. The one I bought with my reenlistment bonus and 4 years of hazard pay. The one I spent every leave renovating until my hands were blistered and raw. I stepped out of the cab, adjusting the weight of my sea bag. The sun was blinding, that perfect Southern California gold that usually felt like a promise. Today it felt like an interrogation light. Standing on my porch were two men. My father, Robert, and my older brother, Joshua. They weren't smiling. They were smirking. The kind of look you give someone right before you pull the rug out from under them. Welcome home, Megan, my father said. He didn't move to hug me. He didn't even step off the porch. He just stood there, arms crossed, blocking the front door like a bouncer at a club I wasn't cool enough to enter. You're just in time to pack the rest of your things. I froze. My master at arms training kicked in before my emotions did. Assess the threat. I scanned their body language. Relaxed. Arrogant. They thought they had already won. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice flat. Joshua laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. We sold the place, sis. Escrow closed yesterday. You're homeless now. I looked at the house. The windows were clean. The lawn was freshly mowed. It looked exactly like the sanctuary I had dreamed about for 6 months while standing watch on a humid flight deck. You sold my house, I repeated. How? Power of attorney, Robert said, pulling a folded document from his back pocket like it was a weapon. You signed it before you deployed, remember? For emergencies. This isn't an emergency, I said. It was for Joshua, my father countered, his tone shifting from smug to self-righteous. His investments took a hit. A big hit. He needed liquidity, Megan. $185,000 worth of liquidity. And since you weren't using the house. I wasn't using it because I was serving my country, I said, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. Exactly, Joshua chimed in. You have free housing on base. You don't need a 3-bedroom house in San Diego. It was a waste of resources. We just reallocated them. Reallocated. That was the word he used. Like my life was just a line item in his budget. I looked at them, really looked at them, and for the first time I didn't see my family. I saw parasites. I saw the people who had drained my bank account for years, who had guilt-tripped me into paying for Joshua's failed startups, his car payments, his bail. I had always been the glass child. That's what the therapists call it. The sibling who is so competent, so low maintenance, that the parents look right through them to focus on the one with the problems. I was transparent to them. I existed only to be shattered when they needed pieces to fix Joshua. But here's the thing about glass. When you break it, it becomes sharp. So let me get this straight, I said, stepping onto the first stair. You used a power of attorney intended for medical emergencies to sell my primary residence while I was deployed, to cover Joshua's crypto losses? It's family money, Robert snapped. It all goes into the same pot. No, I said. It doesn't. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg them to explain how they could do this to me. I just felt a cold, heavy weight settle in my chest. It was the weight of the realization that my sanctuary had been violated. This house wasn't just an asset. It wasn't just wood and stucco. It was the only place in the world where I didn't have to follow orders. It was the only place where I was safe. And they had taken it. Who's the buyer? I asked. Doesn't matter, Joshua said. Check cleared. Money's already in my account. It's done. It matters, I said. Because whoever bought this house is about to have a very bad day. The front door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger. She was wearing a floral dress that couldn't hide the fact that she was heavily pregnant. She looked from me to my father, her eyes wide with confusion. Is everything okay? She asked. Everything is fine, Sarah, my father said, putting on his charming grandfatherly smile. Just a little family miscommunication. Megan here was just leaving. Sarah looked at me. She saw the uniform. She saw the sea bag. And then she looked at my father and the smile dropped from his face. You're Megan, she asked. I am, I said. And you must be the woman who thinks she bought my house. Thinks. Robert laughed nervously. She owns it, Megan. The deed is recorded. It's over. Go back to base and cool off. I looked at my father. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. I saw the way Joshua was shifting his weight, ready to run. And I realized something. They were terrified. They knew deep down that they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. They just didn't know that the line was made of high-tensile steel wire, and they had just tripped the detonator. I'm not going anywhere, I said. And neither are you. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and saw a man who had spent his entire life building a house of cards on a foundation of quicksand. I remembered being 10 years old, watching him scream at a contractor because the tile in the bathroom was the wrong shade of beige. He didn't care about the tile. He cared that someone had defied him. He cared that his vision of perfection had been marred. He was a man who believed that if he just shouted loud enough, reality would bend to his will. And Joshua was his masterpiece. The golden child who could do no wrong even when he was doing everything wrong. I remembered the time Joshua stole my car when he was 16 and totaled it. My father didn't punish him. He bought him a new one. Joshua is spirited, he'd said. He takes risks. Leaders take risks. I wasn't a leader. I was the logistics. I was the one who fixed the flat tires, who paid the insurance premiums, who made sure the registration was up to date. I was the one who joined the Navy not because I wanted to see the world but because I needed a way out. I needed a system that rewarded competence, not charisma. But my father couldn't let go. He had invested too much in the myth of Joshua's brilliance. Every failed startup, every bad investment, every legal scrape. It was just a temporary setback on the road to greatness. And my father? He was the visionary who saw the potential when no one else did. To admit that Joshua was a failure would be to admit that he was a failure. It would be to admit that he had bet on the wrong horse. That's the sunk cost trap. It's not just about money. It's about ego. It's about identity. My father had poured his entire sense of self into Joshua's success. If Joshua went down, he took my father's pride with him. And my father would burn the world down before he let that happen. You don't understand, Megan, Robert said, his voice dropping to that reasonable, patronizing tone he used when he was trying to gaslight me. This isn't just about money. It's about legacy. Joshua is on the verge of something big. This liquidity, it's just a bridge. Once his new venture takes off, he'll buy you 2 houses. Better houses. I don't want 2 houses, I said. I want this one. Don't be selfish, Joshua interjected, wiping a sheen of sweat from his upper lip. You have a steady paycheck. You have the government taking care of you. I'm trying to build an empire here. You should be honored to help. But, he actually said honored. Like I should be grateful for the privilege of being cannibalized. I'm not an investor, Joshua, I said. I'm your sister. And I'm done funding your delusions. Delusions? Robert stepped forward, his face darkening. How dare you? Your brother is a genius. He sees things you can't even imagine. You're just a grunt. A cog in the machine. You wouldn't know vision if it hit you in the face. The insult didn't land. It just confirmed what I already knew. To him, I wasn't a person. I was a resource. I was a battery to be drained until I was empty and then discarded. You're right, I said. I am a grunt. I follow rules. I enforce regulations. And do you know what the first rule of engagement is, Dad? Don't start a fight you can't finish. Sarah was still standing there, clutching her stomach, looking between us like she was watching a tennis match played with live grenades. I think I should go inside, she whispered. No, Robert said sharply. Stay right there, Sarah. This is your house. You have the deed. You have the keys. Don't let her intimidate you. She's upset. She's been under a lot of stress. Deployment does things to people. He was triangulating, trying to pull the innocent third party into his web, trying to use her vulnerability against me. He was painting me as the unstable veteran, the threat, the other. She's right, Sarah, Joshua added, putting on a winning smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Megan is complicated. She has episodes. We just need to get her some help. Maybe call the V. Get her a bed somewhere quiet. I looked at Sarah. I saw the fear in her eyes. But I also saw something else. Intelligence. She wasn't just a pregnant woman in a floral dress. She was watching, listening, calculating. I don't think she's having an episode, Sarah said, her voice trembling but clear. She seems pretty calm to me. That's part of it, Robert said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. The detachment. The lack of effect. It's a symptom. Trust me, I'm her father. I know what she's capable of. So do I said. I'm capable of reading a contract. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I didn't unlock it. I just held it in my hand, a silent reminder that the world was watching, that records existed, that the truth wasn't whatever Robert said it was. Sarah, I said, ignoring my father. When you closed on this house, did you use a title company? Of course, she said. First American. And did you see the power of attorney document? Yes. It was signed and notarized. By who? I asked. By you, Robert cut in. You signed it, Megan. Don't lie. I signed a limited power of attorney for medical decisions, I said, my eyes locked on his. Specific to my deployment. It expired the moment I touched down on U.S. soil. It did not authorize real estate transactions. And it definitely didn't authorize you to liquidate my primary residence. It's a technicality, Joshua shouted. It's the same signature. It counts. No, Sarah said. We all turned to look at her. She had stopped trembling. She was standing straighter now, her hand resting protectively on her belly. It doesn't count. Not in California. Robert blinked. Excuse me. I'm a paralegal, Sarah said. I work for a title company. Not the one we used for the sale, obviously, or this never would have happened. But I know the law. A medical power of attorney cannot be used to transfer real property. If that's what you used, then the deed is void. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a vacuum sealing shut. You're a paralegal? Robert stammered. Yes, Sarah said. She reached into her purse and pulled out her own phone. She tapped the screen a few times, then held it up. The camera light was on. And I'm recording this conversation. Because if you just admitted to using a medical POA to sell a house, that's fraud. That's felony fraud. Robert's face went from red to a sickly shade of gray. He looked at Joshua, waiting for the genius to come up with a solution. But Joshua was staring at his shoes, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. It wasn't just medical, Robert tried, his voice rising in pitch. It was general. It was broad. The notary said it was fine. Which notary? I asked. Benson? The guy who used to do your taxes until he lost his license. Robert flinched. He's a friend. He helped us out. He helped you commit a crime, I said. But that's not even the best part. Even if the power of attorney was valid, even if you had the right forms and the right notary, you still couldn't sell this house. Why not? Joshua demanded. It's in your name. No, I said. It isn't. I took a step forward, closing the distance between me and the men who had tried to erase me. The day before I deployed, I transferred the deed, I said. It's not in my name anymore. It's in the name of the Megan Lawson Irrevocable Living Trust. Sarah gasped. A small, sharp sound of realization. An irrevocable trust? She asked. That's right, I said. Which means I don't own it. The trust owns it. And I am the only trustee. No power of attorney in the world can authorize the sale of property owned by a trust unless the trust document specifically allows it. And mine doesn't. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. So, Robert, I said, using his first name for the first time in my life. You didn't sell my house. You sold a house that doesn't belong to me. You sold a house you have absolutely no legal right to touch. You took money for a property you couldn't deliver. I looked at Sarah. She was already typing on her phone. I'm emailing my boss, she said, her voice hard. We're going to pull the title report right now. If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a mistake. It's grand theft. Grand theft, I repeated. And wire fraud. And forgery. And since I'm a deployed service member, it's a federal crime. I turned back to my father. He was shaking. Actually shaking. You wanted liquidity for Joshua? I asked. Congratulations. You just bought yourself a prison sentence. A prison sentence? Joshua laughed, but it sounded like air escaping a punctured tire. You're crazy. It's a family dispute. The cops won't touch it. It's civil. Civil is when we argue about who gets mom's china, I corrected, my voice dropping an octave, slipping into the tone I used when instructing junior sailors on the use of deadly force. This is federal. I took a step closer to my father. He was sweating profusely now, the collar of his expensive polo shirt damp. He looked like a man trying to hold back a tsunami with a paper umbrella. You see, Robert, you missed one crucial detail in your rush to liquidity. You forgot how I bought this house. Do you remember? He didn't answer. He just stared at me, hate and fear warring behind his eyes. I bought it with a VA loan, I said. Backed by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. Sarah let out a low whistle. She knew exactly where this was going. When you sell a property secured by a VA loan using a power of attorney, I continued, reciting the regulations I had memorized the night I found out about the sale. Federal law requires specific, explicit authorization for that transaction. The lender has to approve the POA specifically for the transaction. The VA has to sign off. Did you call the VA, Dad? Did you get the authorization code? Benson handled it. He choked out. He said he knew a guy at the bank. Benson knows a guy who commits wire fraud, I said. Because that's what this is. When you wired that $185,000 across state lines to pay off Joshua's debts using proceeds from a fraudulent sale of a federally backed asset, that became a federal crime. Mandatory minimums. No parole. I turned to Joshua. He was no longer looking at his shoes. He was looking at me with the wide, terrified eyes of a child who realizes the fire he started has burned down the whole forest. You wanted to be a big shot investor, right? I asked him. You wanted to play in the big leagues. Well, welcome to the majors. The FBI investigates mortgage fraud involving veteran benefits. They don't care about your vision. They don't care about your potential. They care about the paper trail. And thanks to Sarah here, we have the recording of Dad admitting he used a medical POA to do it. Joshua looked at Robert. Dad, is that true? Is it federal? Shut up, Joshua, Robert hissed. No, tell me. Joshua's voice cracked. You said it was a loophole. You said it was gray area. Federal isn't gray area. Federal is Leavenworth. I handled it. Robert screamed, his composure finally fracturing. I handled it for you. You ungrateful little. You didn't handle anything. I interrupted, my voice cutting through his panic like a knife. You trapped him. You dragged him into a felony because you were too arrogant to ask for permission and too proud to admit you were broke. You didn't save him, Robert. You indicted him. The reality hit them then. I could see it. It wasn't just a house anymore. It wasn't just a sister being difficult. It was the end of their lives as they knew them. The money they had stolen wasn't a windfall. It was evidence. The check they had cashed was a confession. I looked at Sarah. She was typing furiously on her phone. I just sent the preliminary title report request to my office, she said without looking up. Flagged as urgent fraud. The title insurance investigation starts the second I hit send on this next email. Once that starts, the accounts are frozen. The money, if you haven't spent it yet, don't touch it. If you have. She looked up at Joshua, her expression pitiless. I hope you bought something you can trade for cigarettes. Joshua made a sound like a wounded animal. He backed away from Robert, putting physical distance between himself and our father, as if proximity alone could contaminate him. I didn't know, Joshua stammered, looking at me, pleading. Megan, I swear. I didn't know about the trust. I didn't know about the VA rules. Dad just said he fixed it. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, I said coldly. Especially when you're the beneficiary of the crime. The trap had snapped shut. The steel jaws were locked. And for the first time in my life I wasn't the one bleeding. Robert stared at me. His face was a mask of contorted rage. The mask of the charming, successful patriarch had melted away, revealing the terrified, controlling narcissist underneath. Psychologists call it an extinction burst. It's what happens when a rat in a lab presses the lever for a pellet and no pellet comes out. It doesn't just walk away. It presses the lever harder. It bites the lever. It screams. It throws itself against the walls of the cage. When a manipulator realizes their control is gone, they don't surrender. They escalate. They try to burn the world down to punish the thing they can no longer control. I saw the burst coming before he even moved. His hands clenched into fists. The veins in his neck bulged. He took a step toward me, invading my personal space, using his height, his bulk, the physical intimidation that had worked on me when I was 12. You listen to me, you little bitch, he screamed, spit flying from his mouth. You fix this. You call that title company and you tell them it was a mistake. You sign a new deed. You do it now. No, I said. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I stood in the ready stance, feet shoulder width apart, weight balanced. I am your father, he roared. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head. How dare you destroy this family? How dare you ruin your brother's future over a piece of property? You selfish, cold-hearted. He lunged. It wasn't a punch exactly. It was a grab. He reached for my shoulders, intending to shake me, to physically force me into submission. It was the biggest mistake of his life. Stand down. My command voice didn't come from my throat. It came from my diaphragm, a wall of sound honed on the firing ranges of Great Lakes and the security checkpoints of Bahrain. It was loud, authoritative, and absolutely terrifying. Robert froze. He blinked, stunned by the sheer volume, by the sudden reversal of the predator-prey dynamic. He had raised a daughter. He had forgotten he was facing a sailor. Take one more step, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper, and I will put you on the ground. And unlike you, Robert, I won't do it out of anger. I'll do it because you are a threat to the safety of this deck. He stopped. His hands hovered in the air, trembling. He looked at me, and for the first time he saw it. He saw that the glass child had hardened into bulletproof laminate. He saw that his anger meant nothing to me. It was just noise. It was just bad weather. You would hurt your own father? He sputtered, trying to regain the moral high ground, trying to play the victim card even as he stood there with his fists raised. I would defend myself, I said, against any aggressor, domestic or foreign. I'm not an aggressor. I'm trying to save us. He turned to Sarah, desperate for an ally. You see this? You see how she treats us? She's unstable. She's dangerous. You can't trust a word she says. Sarah held up her phone. I'm live streaming this to my cloud server, she said calmly. And I'm currently on the line with the non-emergency dispatch. Though based on your behavior, sir, I'm about to switch to emergency. Robert looked like he had been slapped. He spun around to Joshua. Help me. Tell them we did this for the family. But the golden child had shattered. Joshua was backing away, his hands up in surrender. I didn't do anything, Joshua stammered, looking at Sarah's phone, then at me. I was just... Dad told me he had the POA. I thought it was legal. I didn't sign the deed. That was all him. Look at the papers. My signature isn't on the sale documents. It's just his. Joshua. Robert whispered. The betrayal in his voice was genuine. It was the first honest emotion he had shown all day. I did this for you. I didn't ask you to commit fraud. Joshua yelled, his voice cracking. You said you handled it. You said it was clean. I'm not going to jail because you messed up the paperwork, Dad. I have a life. I have prospects. Prospects. Robert laughed, a manic, broken sound. You have debt, Joshua. You have nothing but debt. And now you're throwing me to the wolves. You are the wolf, Dad, I said. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The neighbors were watching now. Mr. Henderson from across the street was standing by his mailbox, phone in hand. The facade of the perfect family, the dutiful father, the successful son, it was all gone. It lay in pieces on the driveway, exposed to the harsh San Diego sun. Sarah lowered her phone. The email to my legal department just went through, she said. Her voice was gentle but final. They're notifying the county recorder to flag the deed. This sale is dead. The money is frozen. And the police. Well, once a title company alleges fraud, the police don't really have a choice. Robert looked at the house. He looked at the perfectly manicured lawn. He looked at the empire of lies he had built, and he watched it collapse into dust. He slumped, all the fight draining out of him, leaving him looking old and small and pathetic. Why? He asked me, tears finally spilling over. Why couldn't you just let it go? Why couldn't you just help him? Because, I said, I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I looked at my watch. It was a sturdy, tactical chronograph I'd bought at the PX in Bahrain. It didn't care about feelings. It just measured time. You have 60 seconds, I said. If you are still on my property when the minute hand hits the 12, I am physically removing you. And I won't be gentle. Robert looked at me one last time. The hate was gone, replaced by something far more pathetic. Defeat. He realized finally that the battery was dead. There was nothing left to drain. He turned to Joshua, who was still trembling by the azaleas. Get in the car, Robert muttered. They walked to Robert's car, not the luxury sedan he used to lease to impress clients, but an older model he'd been forced to downgrade 2 years ago. It was a visual representation of their reality. Dented, aging, and barely holding it together. I watched them go. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt the specific cold satisfaction of a job done to standard. Threat neutralized. Perimeter secured. As they backed out of the driveway, Mr. Henderson across the street gave me a short, sharp nod. I returned it. The neighborhood watch had seen enough. I turned back to the porch. Sarah was still standing there, phone in hand. She looked exhausted, like she had just run a marathon in heels, but her eyes were bright. I'm sorry, I said. I know this isn't the housewarming you wanted. It's the one I needed, she said. My husband, he's too nice. He trusts everyone. If we had moved in, if we hadn't found out until later, your father could have tied this up in court for years. You saved us a mortgage worth of legal fees. We saved each other, I corrected. I couldn't have pulled the title report without you. She smiled, a tired, genuine smile. I'll handle the paperwork from here. My firm will contact the VA. We'll file the fraud affidavits. You won't have to talk to them again unless you want to. I don't, I said. Then you won't. I'll make sure the title company goes after them for the funds. You just enjoy your home. She walked to her car, leaving me alone on the porch. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. It was the sound of a vacuum where chaos used to be. I walked inside. The house smelled like someone else's air freshener, vanilla and lavender, trying too hard to mask the scent of betrayal. I walked through the living room, past the staging furniture Sarah had brought in. I went to the kitchen. My father had left a coffee mug on the counter. It had the logo of Joshua's failed crypto startup on it. I picked it up. I walked to the back door, opened it, and threw the mug into the recycling bin. The crash of ceramic shattering was the only closure I needed. The weeks that followed didn't have a timeline. They had a texture. The texture of paperwork, of emails from the title company, of certified letters from the district attorney. Robert took a plea deal. Probation, restitution, and a permanent record that barred him from ever holding a fiduciary position again. He avoided prison barely, but he lost his reputation. In his world, that was a fate worse than a cell. Joshua wasn't so lucky. The investigation into the investment debt opened a Pandora's box of other financial irregularities. His assets were seized. His car, his watches, his empire, all liquidated to pay back the people he'd scammed. He was forced to move into a studio apartment that he had to pay for himself. They tried to reach out once. A letter from Robert, sent through his lawyer, asking for family reconciliation. I didn't burn it. That would have been dramatic. I just ran it through the shredder along with the junk mail. It was just paper. One evening about 2 months later, I sat on my floor. I hadn't bought new furniture yet. I liked the space. I liked the emptiness. I realized then that the glass child was gone. I wasn't transparent anymore. I wasn't fragile. I was solid. I was visible. And I was the owner of the ground I stood on. I had burned the bridge to my family, yes. But looking at the ashes, I didn't feel cold. I felt warm. I felt safe. Because for the first time in my life, the only person I had to serve was myself. If you've ever had to burn a bridge to keep yourself warm, share this story. You never know who needs the permission to do the same.